Hello everyone, welcome to a new video on the channel. I am sorry that this one is coming quite late for what is shown in the video, but in a way it's good I waited until now to start working on this video, which I will explain why later. Anyway, today we'll be taking a look at the serious damage done to Mulgrave Mill's 2-foot gauge railway lines in northern Cairns. For those unaware, Mulgrave Mill is a sugarcane crushing mill located in the far north of Queensland, Australia, and operates a large 2-foot gauge rail network for the clear purpose of sugarcane hauling. But in late 2023, Cyclone Jasper hit 100 kilometers north of Cairns and has resulted in major damage to the area. As a Category 2 cyclone, upon landfall, its direct and immediate impact on Cairns itself was not felt until the torrential rain left behind by the cyclone resulted in disastrous flooding, primarily of northern Cairns, that broke records for the area, resulting in an immense amount of damage. Statistics-wise, the Barron River itself, the largest river through northern Cairns, went 4.5 meters over its peak, breaking the record of 3.8 meters in 1977. At the height of the flooding, 6,000 cubic meters of water passed through the river gauge at Myola, nearby Coranda, every second. During the event, gauges picked up a maximum rainfall amount of 2.2 meters, which is 2,200 millimeters or 86 inches. Safe water supply to homes fell to 3%, and 941 properties were recorded as damaged due to the flooding, according to the Cairns Council, where they have also put the cost estimate for them to exceed over 100 million Australian dollars. Anyone in Cairns during this period was practically stranded, as the airport was closed due to flooding on the runway itself, and due to the fact of Cairns being surrounded by mountains, the rivers, and ocean, all roads in and out were closed, with the most important roads receiving major damage, some of which are still undergoing repairs, with areas restricted to one-lane travel only. In regards to the death toll, at most, it sadly appears 2 were unfortunately killed after the event caused by flood-linked bacterial infection. While no one else has died due to the flood's effects, many have had their homes ruined, especially those living in Cairns' northern suburbs, where we are focusing today. The effect on the railways of northern Cairns were quite severe, with Mulgrave Mill impacts, being the loss of a rail bridge spanning over 50 meters, completely collapsing, isolating rail-linked cane fields north of the Barron River, as well as even more significant damage to the now isolated rail area. For the 3-foot 6-inch gauge railway passing through the area and west into the tablelands, it forced the shutdown of the Coranda Scenic Railway for well over 4 months for repairs to be completed, and has only resumed common operation recently after brief runs around March. For the Savannah Lander, utilising the same line, their usual starting date of around March has been pushed back 2 months to May, coming up soon, where even then they are being forced to do limited runs to Almaden at first and not all the way to Forsyth. If you couldn't tell already, this will not be my usual style of video. It will be made up of almost entirely photographs of cane railway damage taken in late December 2023 and early January 2024, where I will provide voice-over context, photograph comparisons before and after the floods where possible, and map location references. And with that, let's begin. I hope you find this video interesting. Welcome to the Cairns Railfan. First, we begin at the Redlands Depot. This is the shed and siding area where a small locomotive is often kept for northern Cairns operations when the big locomotive comes up from Gordonvale for bins to be transported into the northern Cairns area and then back south to the mill. Luckily, this area wasn't too badly damaged, with the worst being some knocked around shed equipment and debris caught in some nearby objects. Next up is a quick look at some damage on the branch line into the freshwater area. I haven't covered train activity on this branch line before, but as you can see, the accessible areas of this branch line suffered quite a bit of damage, with lots of fallen trees, vegetation, and damaged rusty rails. Now we are leading up to the worst of the damage, where the 50-meter plus railway bridge crossing the Barron River, built to resist floods, ended up collapsing, leaving barely anything left. The railway line here heads northeast of the freshwater branch and is where trains would climb up and down the hill after or before crossing the Barron River. The floods managed to wash away a lot of natural ground and ballast around the railway track here, creating ditch-like formations next to the railway line. Now let's take a proper look at what was, at one point, a railway bridge over the Barron River. Usually this area would be rich with vegetation, so that I never was able to access this bridge for a video of any trains crossing it. But now completely barren along the river banks because of the floods, it's far easier to get to. The damage here is astounding and will be the main source of infrastructure trouble for Mulgrave Mill to get sugarcane from the northern side of the river to the south side. On the other side of the river where a few bridge supports holding steel pieces of the bridge remain, a larger part of it is still just barely hanging on and dangling into the river, but with a massive amount of debris piled up on the bridge, after which a few bridge supports still stand, but with no rails on them. As the railway line would usually curve further north, meters worth of sand are piled on top through the vegetation, which at one point would have had far more bushes and trees around. And unsurprisingly as well, there's also fallen vegetation a little further down the line. Across the Captain Cook Highway at the go-karting track and line into the Yorkeys Knob area, the damage is just as bad here, with lots of dirt, debris and mud over the track, as well as even some sinkholes having formed underneath the railway. At the very end of the Yorkeys Knob line, the siding group is mostly covered with gravel and flood debris wrapped around the points levers there. Now off the Yorkeys Knob line and onto the railway line that follows the Captain Cook Highway, an impressive amount of damage has built up at Tomatoes Creek, including lots of sand covering the railway tracks, making it seem like they were never there at all, and lots of vegetation debris covering the Tomatoes Creek Bridge can also be seen. Luckily though, it didn't collapse like the one on the Barron River. The small siding branch that heads across the Captain Cook Highway into the edge of the Holloways Beach suburb reveals some damage as well. Luckily not too bad by the looks of things, mostly washed away ballast. Next up is the final spot we will be looking at, where a very large amount of mud and sand has washed up over the tracks, completely covering large sections of it. At the very end of the line, a destroyed tree which definitely wasn't there before has even been washed up over the buried line. Now this brings us to a close on the rather fascinating but bad damage done to the 2-foot gauge cane railways of northern Cairns owned by Mulgrave Mill. But some of you may be wondering, what does the mill plan to do in the face of all this damage, as they have lost an entire railway bridge, leaving sugarcane farmers north of the Barron River without a rail connection, so their cane can no longer be collected? Now this is where I mention why it actually turned out to be a good thing that this video got a long time to finally be worked on. And that's because with all these months having gone by, it has slowly revealed the mill's course of action for the damage. What they're planning to do is a road rail loading system where they're constructing special ramps north and south of the river. This will work where trucks back up to the ramp and either load the sugarcane bins onto or off their trailer and haul them by road back and forth between the south and north of the Barron River. If you are familiar with my past videos on the now closed Mossman Mill, it will work something like their system of this did. However, since Mulgrave Mill's cane bins are fixed to their flatbeds and not interchangeable like Mossman's, the trucks will have rails on their trailer and will most likely use a winch to get their bins on and off their trailers. Mulgrave Mill does this sort of operation on a limited scale, such as on the Little Mulgrave branch line just west of Gordonvale, where most of the line now lays abandoned due to old bridges and requires this operation. Interestingly though, Unlike at Little Mulgrave, it appears there will actually be a locomotive placed on the isolated section to shunt the bins from the Northern River sidings to a ramp, one of which I have seen under construction in the suburb of Barron, and I have been told the damaged lines are being cleared of debris for this operation to take place. As for the specific locomotive they will be using for this operation, my guess is one of the mill's rebuilt Clyde Engineering DHI 71s, either 16 Camma or 25 Cairns. I believe this because the rebuilt DHI 71s are spare locomotives for the mill, mostly because I have heard they are unfortunately rather poor performers, and will most likely get relegated to a limited operation such as this one. This is why I have barely any photos and videos of these two locomotives. I certainly hope to be able to see and record these operations for you all sometime, as it will be very interesting to see how exactly it will all take place, with bins being transferred from ramps by road and back onto rail in northern Cairns. And at the time being, it's currently rather unclear whether the mill will be rebuilding the bridge over the Barron River or not. It's good to keep in mind it is a possibility that they will, as in the short term, rebuilding the bridge is expensive, but the long-term costs of running these road rail operations will eventually overtake the bridge's short-term costs. Just before I finish up, I would like to say thank you all very much for 500 subscribers. Halfway to 1,000 is incredible. I also have lots of new train footage that will eventually be uploaded to the channel, including Sydney trams at Circular Quay, Northern Sydney passenger and freight at Eastwood, NGRs at Dakabin, grain, ballast, steam and coal of the southwest, and a Savannah-landed chase from Almaden to Kuranda. I hope that all gives you something to look forward to after quite a while of not much new on the channel, which I'm sorry about. But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.